If we say manifestation, just in its sort of colloquial sense of the term, we think that whatever I want, I will get. But the colloquial sense of the term omits the consequences of what we want.
If you want to be rich, that's great. But then everything, all the stress that comes with it, you also get.
Ganesha has two big ears, which say listen first. He's got two small eyes that say concentrate on the work that you're doing. He has a mouth that is covered, saying don't speak that much. But when you speak, say something of value. What we want from Bhagwan, Bhagwan will give it to us fully.
I don't think we know enough about Indian heritage and culture. At least I didn't. And my attempt to find out more about it was to bring on a good friend, Om Dhumatkar. Om is not only a great, knowledgeable person on the Indian heritage, the Shastras, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, but also a business leader in one of UK's largest leading banks. And therefore, whatever you're going to listen to in this episode is just not Gyan, or is not just somebody who's just talking at you, but he is talking from deep experience and also practical tips of how he has used this knowledge in his life. Whether that is when he struggled as a business leader and gone back and read the Bhagavad Gita or read the Shastras and really looked at what is it that the idol of Ganesha tells you about leadership. I know, sounds really absurd, but you will listen to the episode and learn more. Or why is it that Bharat is a better way to really describe our society compared to India? I know this is slightly political, but you'll really enjoy his insight on it and also his view on it, which is actually deep-rooted in facts. You'll also learn about some of the rituals, like a Havan. Why do we do it? What is the significance? What is the attitude with which we should do it? So many such practicable lessons in this episode that I particularly enjoyed to learn about, and I'm sure you will do too. So listen in and let me know what you think. So, welcome Om on the podcast on Pragyaan. I'm actually delighted to have you, and in many ways I know you and yet I don't know you, and so this is going to be a very interesting conversation of, I think, unlayering Om and also your journey. But I think the most important thing for me really is that when I've interacted with you, I've seen that you are balancing the materialistic life and the spiritual life so beautifully. And therefore, a lot of the questions that I'm going to ask you today are mostly going to be aligned with one single goal, which is, of course, I can read the Gita. Of course, I can listen to 20,000 YouTube videos. But how does that apply to me in every situation in my life, whether that is whether I should choose this career or that, or if I'm struggling with grief, or if I'm struggling with conflict? Does the Gita have an answer for me? And I will look to you to share a lot of those.
Firstly, thank you so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. So let's kick this off. We had a very interesting episode. So I'm sure you guys can notice, usually I'm sitting there and the guest is here. This time we flipped this around. And that's because Om was over and we were having a very deep conversation, like every conversation with Om tends to be. And suddenly his ear started bleeding.
Yeah.
And I want you to take it from there, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm here in Delhi for a couple of days. I think some mosquito must have bit me, and I was feeling a little bit of irritation on this ear for some time now. And so we were sitting there, and sort of as one does, sitting and thinking, and then suddenly I must have sort of scratched something, and it starts bleeding. And here we are in the middle of a deep conversation. And, I don't have a change of clothes. So if you get blood on this suddenly, someone's going to have to do a quick shopping trip. But for me, what stood out from that moment was, here's something big that's about to happen. You've got a team here. We've scheduled the time. I've traveled in. And everything is set. The stage is set. The conversation's here. And something goes wrong. And the crux of managing oneself, whether it's using Shastra or whether being a spiritual person or not a spiritual person, just as a leader, someone is leading their team or leading their own life, how do you react to that in the moment challenge? But the real message is this, that we can prepare as much as we want. We can think of as many eventualities. But there will be this one moment where something small goes wrong. And our ability to manage ourselves in that moment often becomes the difference between success and failure.
I agree. I couldn't agree more with you. And I think, you also were mentioning how, when you're going to do something big, sometimes these struggles happen because it's almost like a reminder to you that don't get too overconfident.
Yeah. There's a beautiful point in the Bhagavad Gita where Bhagwan Shree Krishna says, Ahankaran vimudhatma karta ham iti manyate. So Ahankar is an egotistical person. But he gives a definition of who an egotistical person is as well. Because when we think of an egotistical person, we see someone who's very proud, very vain, and so on. But Bhagavan says, an egotistical person, ahankaran, vimud atma. Mood means dumb. Vimud means vishesh murta, exceptionally dumb. Why? Because karta ham iti manyate. They believe that karta ham, I am the doer. That is their belief.
Yeah.
So we go through our lives thinking that everything is controlled by us, but actually there is a separate plan. Some might say a divine source, someone say it might be a Bhagwan's arrangement, but equally there is just our plan and the universe's plan. And sometimes those are aligned and sometimes the universe knocks us. And when it knocks us, it's actually a really good opportunity for us to test where our attention is. Where is our consciousness? Because if our sense of self is in the right place, then we are available to deal with that situation. If it's not in the right place, if it's knocked as a result of the situations, we're not available. Suddenly we're victims to the circumstances, And so many people go through their lives, sadly, and this used to be me in a chapter of my life as well, where circumstances led me. I didn't lead the circumstances. Life happened to me. I wasn't living my life. So I think, I used the example of the Gita, so I'll give credit where it's due. Gita is what has taken me and really absorbing it into my life over the last 16 or 17 years since I first started studying it, has been the difference that says, I'm available for life rather than life knocking me around.
So well said. Just being also present like we did just before we started the podcast. And I think what I'm hearing you say is when you're available, you can only be available if you're present.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in that moment, truly open to see what is that moment trying to teach you or tell you, you're going to miss it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And that's one of the amazing things that meditation achieves for us. People say, what are the benefits of meditation? And then there are obviously scientific studies that say how it affects the hippocampus and, amygdala response is delayed. And those are all very valid things and we can happily talk about it. But to put it in a very simple way, we are all triggered by situations all the time. Okay, if I were to call you names, certainly if you were to call me names, there would be a past version of me that would react. It would not respond. It would just react. Now, what is the difference between reaction and response? If you say something to me or if life triggers me in some way, meditation gives us a little bit of space between that trigger and our response. And it's in that little space where we can choose how we want to act. Do we want to get angry? Do we want to get panicky? Do we want to call names back? Do we want to throw our toys out of the pram? And you know what? The funny thing is, when we're having a triggered response, each one of those reactions seems like the right one. I want to throw my toys out of the pram. I want to call names. This is the right thing. How can they say these things? But it's only in the moments after that we live to regret them.
Yeah.
So the more we can build that space between the trigger and response, the more we are making ourselves available to live a regret-free life.
Absolutely. I mean, somebody asked me more recently that, what is really free will? Do we really have a free will if everything is written and everything is destined and, you are here for a purpose? And for me, that is free will. That moment that you spoke about, how I respond and the choice I make that is the only time I think in life where we as human beings can exercise our free will to choose that path of responding as opposed to reacting. This has already gone off to a great start, by the way. There's so many things I want to take the conversation, the direction which I want to take it in. Specifically, you spoke about ahankar, and
Yes.
I think one, if you can define that,
Yeah.
and two, if I just talk about the Mahabharata, right? The war really took place, and Krishna Bhagwan also talks about this,
Yeah.
that it's because of the ahankar of Duryodhan,
Mhm.
where many times he approaches him to find some sort of resolution, but he insists that this is the only way. So just connecting the two things, what is ahankar, and really the cause of that war was ahankar, and
Yeah.
how can our leaders be different, but also as a praja, how can we choose many more enlightened leaders so that hopefully we are ruled by the right set of people?
Yeah.
Sorry, too much packed in there, but
No,
yeah.
that's a really beautiful question and very relevant to the times in which we live. See, the roots of any war, you can use Mahabharata, the war at Kurukshetra, as an example, but really the roots of any war are many, many, many years before the conflict actually occurs. And typically, it lies not just in the character of the leaders, but also the character of the people who either choose those leaders or tolerate those leaders, both ways.
Yeah.
And this isn't a specific criticism of any leader in the world today. It's a very general statement.
I mean, they say the leaders we have are the ones that reflect society at large.
As a whole,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, if we think about Duryodhan, for example, the war happened for what reason? It didn't happen because, he was the son of the king, and there was another arrangement with an older brother of the king who couldn't be king, and therefore his children. It wasn't a succession crisis.
Yeah.
It came because Duryodhan himself was aggrieved about this situation. He was aggrieved for a whole range of reasons, including past childhood trauma. Let's put it that way, right? Could he have healed from those early life experiences? Yes, he could have. How could he have healed? He could have healed by evolving his sense of self. So our sense of self really is the best way to think of ahankar.
True.
And the core message of the Bhagavad Gita is Bhagavan saying, make sure that your sense of self is something that doesn't change and is always there. And it will make you happy and feel fulfilled. Both Duryodhan and Arjun had the same sense of fear just as the war was about to kick off. Fear is the wrong word. Insecurity probably
Right.
is the right is the better phrase. Arjun went to Krishna and surrendered and said, I am your devotee. I am under your protection. Please guide me for the right thing. Just moments before that, Duryodhan had also gone to his guru. But you know what he did in his insecurity? In his insecurity, he taunted his guru. So he actually, as a result of his choice to act in that moment, he closed himself off for wisdom that his guru could have given him. And even at the last moment, that war could have been stopped. But we know what happened.
Absolutely. And I think we keep telling ourselves very similar stories, right? Because to your point about childhood trauma, to your point about how we have grown up, our conditioning, but we have the ability to change all of that and evolve out of it. I want to also just step back and talk through a little bit around, just give me the landscape of the Indian heritage or the scriptures, because,
Yeah.
we always, of course, talk a lot about the Bhagavad Gita, but that is just one aspect of a very broader landscape that we have,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Upanishads, the Vedas, and how do they all tie up? Because I think that will set a good context for us to then go deeper into terms.
Sure. I might go a little bit broader than that as well.
Please.
And when we say Hinduism, it's not necessarily a word that is native to Hinduism.
Oh, interesting.
Hinduism would not describe itself as Hindu or ism.
Yeah.
You see, both
Yes.
of them mean to have an ism means a certain thing. To
Yes.
say Hindu means a certain thing. The way Hinduism would describe itself is Sanatan Vedic Dharma. Sanatan means timeless. Timeless. It's not just eternal. Eternal means it was created at one point and it's still going. No, it is timeless. It is ever renewing. It is ever relevant. Sanatan. Vedic means that it comes, it means there's two very beautiful meanings. One is that it comes from the Vedas, simple, Vedic. The other one is that it is focused on the achievement of Vidya, Dharma, path of living authentically. Dharma is constantly translated as duty.
Yes.
Not just duty. Dharyate iti dharma, that which upholds. So if dharma, if we say the relationship, dharma of a brother, dharma of a sister, that is just a title, but that title is sustained by the actions of that individual. Say, for example, you are my sister and I hurt you and I exploit you. I am not behaving in the way a brother should behave.
Yeah.
So that's how I am out of kilter with my dharma. It's not my duty to protect you. It is the nature of a brother to protect. It's the nature of any sibling to protect their sibling.
Yeah.
You know, so if you think about it, the name itself, Sanatan Vedic Dharma, is so much more profound than purely just saying Hinduism.
Yeah.
Okay? We have a variety of concepts of divinity, each of which are very beautiful and interlinked with each other. So we have one concept called Brahman, which is formless. The underlying reality that upholds everything is called Brahman, not Brahmaji, huh?
Brahman, yes.
Then we have Paramatma, which is that element of Brahman that resides in our heart and brings life to every being, not just human beings, but to this plant, to any animal and so on.
Yeah.
Paramatma. Then you have Bhagavan, which is the personal relationship with the divine, that the various forms that we get to interact with, the various forms that Bhagavan takes based on our temperament. So people say, well, which is the most supreme? They're all supreme because they're all representations of Brahman.
Yeah.
But we have to connect in the right way. And they have taken those forms for us to connect with. Some connect with Krishna, some connect with Bhagwan Shiv, some connect with Ganesh Ji, and so on. Even with Krishna, some people will connect with Bal Krishna, some people will connect with, Yogacharya, who's giving the message of the Gita.
Yeah.
So based on our temperament, Bhagwan manifests, and that is Bhagwan. And then you have Ishwar, whose job it is to create a system in which all of our karmas can be expended. So when we say, oh, God does this and God sent us, it's a very limited way of framing it. And I'm not criticizing any other religions that use the phrase God. I'm just saying in Sanatan Vedic Dharma, it's a bit of an out of place vocabulary.
It limits everything. Our understanding of the concept itself becomes so limited because of the words we use.
Correct. So in answer to your question, we first spoke about Sanatan Vedic Dharma, explained that. Secondly, we went into depth on what is the concept of divinity.
Yes.
In our faith. Then we see that there are 6 principal sampradayas or theologies, ultimate theologies that have manifested and are present throughout Hinduism. Now, I'm not saying that there are only 6. There are variations of each of the 6, and there are, other paths that are separate to these 6 as well. But the 6 principal paths are Shaiva Sampradaya, which sees Shiva as supreme; Devi Sampradaya or Shakta Sampradaya, that sees the divine feminine as supreme; Vaishnava, that sees Vishnu and Vishnu's avatars as supreme, and also there are parts of Vaishnavism that see Krishna as supreme, and there are other parts of Vaishnavism that see Ram as supreme. Vaishnava. Then we have Ganapatya, that see Ganesha as supreme. In the south, primarily, but also in other parts of India, we have Kaumara Sampradaya, that sees Skanda or Kartikeya as supreme. And finally, we have a 6th Sampradaya that has sadly been diminished over the years because of various forms of colonialism, which was the Saurya Sampradaya. That saw Surya as supreme.
Okay.
And the remnant of that we have today is in Chhat Puja.
Right.
And also the widespread prevalence of Gayatri Sadhana is also, what we have today as Saurya from the Saurya Sampradaya. So there's this is the third part. Like, what are the different theologies within Hindu? Each theology will have their own set of texts, their own Puranas and so on. So now that we have understood these core concepts, Sanatan Vedic Dharma, what is Bhagwan, what are Sampradayas, we then come to what is Shastra.
Right.
Now, we already said Sanatan Vedic Dharma sees its roots in the Vedas.
Yes.
Now, Vedas, we know, are four: Rig Ved, Samaved, Yajurved, Atharva Ved. Now, what is in the Vedas? Well, there's a lot of stuff in the Vedas. Yeah, but if we were to classify the Vedas in a way, I wouldn't say simplistic, but in an essentialist way, you would see three sections: Upasana Kand, Karma Kand, and Jnana Kand. Upasana Kand are simplistically hymns that we chant for the divine. So those hymns are contained in sections known as Upasana Kand.
Okay.
Karma Kand are the practices of worship. Yajna, Havan, so on, come directly from the Vedas. And there are specific actions as well as specific mantras associated in Karma Kand. And the third one is Jnana Kand. Now, Jnana Kand includes other philosophical sections of the Vedas. And the texts that form the Jnana Kand are what we know as Upanishads. Now, the Vedic wisdom, particularly the Upanishadic wisdom, tends to be very brief. As few words are used, only those many words are used as is necessary. You know?
There's a lot of restraint.
Exactly. So, how do you take those principles and illustrate them? So, our rishis looked into the distant past to understand what events have occurred to illustrate these Vedic principles, which is where we get the Puranas.
Okay.
The Puranas then relate to, again, the different classifications of theology that we discussed. There are primarily Vaishnava Puranas, there are primarily Shaiva Puranas, there are primarily Shakta Puranas, and so on, that illustrate the interrelationships of the divine and the manifestations in those six primary forms that we spoke about, and also illustrate the Vedic principles.
So it helps you uncover what is really in those Upanishads, because if you were to just read it and you're not that evolved, you wouldn't know how to apply it in your life.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So it just basically, it's like 101.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it's not, some people treat them as foundational texts. If one studies the Puranas and depths, one can achieve self-realization. It's not like that's an undergraduate and Upanishads are postgraduate. No. They are complete in themselves. But what they also do is illustrate the principles of the Vedas. And apart from the Vedas and the Puranas, we have a third category of texts which are known as itihasas.
Yes.
Itihasas specifically mean historical occurrences.
Yes.
And there are two itihasas, Ramayana and Mahabharata. So then we see this broad tapestry of Vedic wisdom, that is available to us in so many ways. If you want to see it as storytelling also, it's there. But what ends up happening is when we see it as storytelling, we limit ourselves to the wisdom that it is. If you just see it, ये तो सिर्फ story है, क्या है? But they're not available in that sense to say, okay, well, but what does this part of the story actually mean?
Yeah.
We will just say, okay, this was the story, this happened, that happened, fine, chalo, ho gaya.
We'll just narrate it instead of really seeing what is the learning for me in it.
Exactly. And there is a depth of learning at every step. So in the Mahabharata, we have the Bhagavad Gita. If we also have the Vishnu Sahasranam, by the way, it also comes from the Mahabharata. Oh. It's not a separate text that someone created much later, as some so-called experts on Hinduism try to tell us. If we treat Mahabharata just as a story, we close ourselves off to the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. We close ourselves off to the beauty of the Vishnu Sahasranam. If we see Ramayana just as a story, we close ourselves to the depth of wisdom in the Ram Gita, in Vibhishan Gita, in Purjan Gita. So many deep spiritual texts. There's one section in Ramayana, for example, when Ram is building the bridge to go to Lanka,
Rama Setu.
And Ram Setu is Bhagwan Shri Ram is building the Ram Setu, and his whole army is doing. So Mandodari, Ravan's wife, who is a great devotee and a very evolved being, goes to Ravan and says, Ravan, what are you doing? The bridge is being built. You still have time. Go return Sita and ask for forgiveness. Bhagwan Shri Ram will forgive you. And that discussion between Mandodari and Ravan is known as Ravan Mandodari Samvad. And in that Ravan Mandodari Samvad, Ravan says, I know what is the truth. I know what I have done is wrong. But I can't help myself. The nature of my mind is such that despite knowing the truth, I cannot act on it. And how many of us are actually living that way?
Yes.
We know what is the right thing. And I'm not, it's almost like saying, oh, others, you guys, you know what. I know what is the right thing. How often am I able to do the right thing? Then we start to see not just Ram and Ravan as good and evil. We see the tendencies of Ravan in our own hearts. And that sort of knowing what happened to Ravan because he was not able to control ourselves, then gives us the strength to control ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, very rightly put. And I think there's always that huge gap between knowing and doing. And I'm always in that, I'm always very curious about how different people bridge that gap in their lives.
Yeah.
Because we're also getting so used to immediate gratification.
Yes.
So we tend to take the easier paths because we're not looking at the longer journey, which is going to have delayed gratification, but it's going to take me a lot of time to get there.
Yeah.
So I look at the quick, kick that I can get now, and the rest of it I'll see later.
Yeah.
But it also brings me back to just what you shared about Ravana, that he was so evolved and so self-aware and also being so true to himself. If you're talking about even the Gita, where we have so many vikshepas, where there are so many veils we create in our lives where we don't allow us to see the truth about ourselves.
Yeah.
And you're saying that everything around the Gita is about being authentic.
Yes.
And if it's really about being authentic and being self-aware, what can we do in our daily lives, or what have you done also through your practice to really know what your authentic self is? And I understand it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
But still, what is that one thing, or what are the 2-3 things that we can constantly fall back on, or somebody like me can learn from you to do that?
Yeah. The reality is we are all works in progress in our lifetime. I can say this is the authentic truth, this is the self. All you need to do is go from here to here, and then once you've achieved that level of self, then you can act from that place. The reality is, even though it may appear simple is not always easy. So to walk the spiritual path is to pursue evolution at every opportunity.
Yeah.
And the way to achieve that evolution, at least the way you asked me what I do. So here's what I do. I ensure that there are 3 elements that are constantly in my life. One is sadhana. Sadhana means practice.
Yeah.
Any practice. It could be a simple japa practice. And I always say to people, a few things done consistently over a long period of time will have a greater impact than a great amount of activity done for 2 days and then failed on the 3rd. Okay?
Yeah, intensity versus consistency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is sadhana. The second one, now we've already spoken, sadhana creates space inside us.
Yeah.
That space needs to be filled with wisdom. Because otherwise, if that's not filled with wisdom, our inner poison starts to come up. And an experienced meditator will tell you this, that when we start meditating, the first thing that comes up is like, oh my God, these thoughts, I had them in me. What the heck? And, someone who isn't being guided or isn't in a position to share what's happening inside will then be turned off from meditation. Say, no, I can't meditate. How many people say, I tried meditation, I can't meditate. It's because of this. You try it, and the first thing that comes up is the poison.
Yeah.
So what we need to deal with that poison is Shastra. Shastra is wisdom. Just think of it as wisdom. And if that Shastric study involves something as profound as studying the Upanishads, that's great. If it involves something as simple as watching a Bhagavad Gita YouTube video, it could be mine, could be someone else's, I am okay with that. That's also fine. If it means going into therapy and talking about getting the wisdom and perspective of a qualified therapist, that is also fine. So the first 2 are sadhana, shastra. And the third, which is also key, very, very, very important, is sangha, the company that we keep. We are the result of the people that we hang about. We are also physically the result of what we eat. Right? If I'm having, much as I love pizzas, if I continue having them, I don't have them really, but if I have them without control, then my physical health will go completely out of whack.
Yeah.
In the same way, if I'm consuming the company of people who are taking me down, a highly sort of materialistic path that doesn't evolve me, then surely that is the outcome I'll end up achieving. So sadhana, shastra, sangha together are very important.
Yeah.
Now, of these three, shastra is available to us widely. Wisdom is available in many places. In fact, there are probably more people who are willing to give wisdom than take wisdom. Sadhana is also available. Simple sadhanas done over long periods of time. Sangha in today's world is something that we need to work on and find our right sangha. And to get the right sangha, a little bit of patience is required.
Absolutely agree with you. I think two things really, jumped out at me from my life experience, because I also meditate and do heartfulness, and I also train in meditation. And more often than not, the first experience of people is exactly that, where they're like, oh, I'm not able to close my eyes, as soon as I do that, things from like 20, 30 years ago suddenly pop up, which I didn't even know that existed in my subconscious.
Yeah.
And that's because of exactly, one is you're closing your eyes and listening to your subconscious for the first time in your life. So it's going to really come at you.
Yeah.
And then the second is, like we always say that meditation is also a process of cleaning, right? So when you first clean a clogged drain, what comes out? All the dirt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That comes out first. And if you don't empty yourself, there's no place for that wisdom to come in. So when you empty yourself through all these experiences and a lot of the chatter that we have in our mind, only then when you meditate, you get that new experience and the evolution then happens, to add to what you're saying. Yeah. And the second around Sangha, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, some people along the way just fall off because there will always be judgment when you are trying to do the more difficult thing.
Yes.
Because sometimes it comes from a place of people themselves beating themselves up, saying, hey, I actually want to do that and I can't, but she or he can. Yeah. So I'll try and pull them down and bring them to my level. Yeah. But you need to keep going at what your goal is. I also want to just talk a little bit about, the foundational concepts of the Gita.
Okay.
There's the non-attached action, but mostly around discipline. Yoga is looked upon as the yama, niyama, all of the 8 Ashtanga yoga principles. Of course, your meditation, which is dhyana, which we've spoken about, but also knowledge and devotion. Like, what do these terms, what should they mean to people? Because again, we look at the English words and we think of them in a particular way, but the Sanskrit definition is very different. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it also is, I think when some of these terms foundationally are clear to us, then I feel many more people open up to this idea of, let me go try it.
Yeah, absolutely. And apart from sort of using English terms with their own loaded baggages, we also end up seeing these as separate. Bhakti is separate, Gyan is separate, so on. But they're not separate, really. So if we say what are the core concepts of the yoga, of the Bhagavad Gita, we have to understand the context of the Bhagavad Gita first. So Bhagavad Gita, unlike the Upanishads, unlike pretty much any other scripture in the world, is delivered on a battlefield.
Yes.
It is not delivered in the solitude of a forest or in the peaks of wisdom of the Himalayas or, on the walk on a beach or in some cave. No, it is delivered in the din and roar, not just of life, but of a marketplace. Not just of a marketplace, but of a battlefield.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that battlefield represents our own lives.
Yes.
That are constantly, we are battling through and making choices. Some of those choices and circumstances go to our liking, others do not. So when Arjun finds himself on that battlefield, he has already made one very good choice, that he has requested Bhagwan, Shree Krishna, to be his charioteer. And so, as I said earlier, he experiences a moment of insecurity. And that insecurity also in him manifests as ego. And he says to Bhagwan Shri Krishna, take me to the middle of the battlefield so I may see who has assembled in front of me. He's like, oh, let's see who has the guts to come and fight us. And Shri Krishna knows where the statement is coming from. So he takes him into the middle of the army, not to some sort of, Lallu regiment, to use the technical phrase, but in front of the greatest warriors of the Kauravas. He puts him in front of Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Bhishma Pitamaha, and the great other warriors. Duryodhan, we may deride him, but he was a great warrior, and so on. So seeing all of them assembled in front of him, not so much Duryodhan, but certainly Bhishma Pitamaha and Dronacharya, Arjun suffers what we would today call a nervous breakdown. Because he says, I cannot bring myself to fight them.
Yeah.
Guru nahatva hi mahanubhavan shreyan. You start to use like, how can I kill my guru? How can I kill someone who's like my father?
Yeah.
And so on. And he says, Vepatuscha harire me romaharshashta jayate gandiva sramshate hasta. Like he starts to say, my hair is standing on end. I cannot think. My legs are wobbly. My bow is slipping from my hand. Finally sits down on the rath and says, I will not fight.
Yeah. It's like, when you have a panic attack or a nervous breakdown in a stressful situation.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And one of the beauties of that being illustrated in the Bhagavad Gita is normalizing a true mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world today that says, oh, mental health is not a real thing. And it absolutely is.
Yeah.
If one of the greatest heroes of our time was most prepared for one battle, and in the moment of that battle, he had a nervous breakdown, then certainly in our Kurukshetras, our own lives, we should expect that from time to time there'll be challenge. Sometimes there'll be small challenge, like a little cut on the ear. Sometimes there'll be big challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that context, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, what does he do? First, he gives Arjuna shock treatment. Kutastva kashmalibidam vishame samupastitam anarya jushtamasvargyam akirtikaram Arjuna klebhyam masmagamah partha naitattvayupapadyate kshudram rudaya daurbalyam tyaktotvishtauta parantapa. It's like, the language, even the Sanskrit we hear is so harsh.
Yes.
So impactful. He says, what makes you, what kind of position have you put yourself in?
Yeah.
It is not noble. It is not manly. Who are you?
Yeah.
You daurbalyam. There is no bala left in your heart that you are behaving in this way of fallen down. So then all of Arjun's confused ranting gets focused. And that's when he said, I cannot kill my guru. And so before that he's saying, oh, if I fight this war, the arrangement of society will end, women will no longer be honored, this and that. And Bhagwan gets him, what is,
focus.
Get to the point,
Yeah.
son.
Yeah.
And he says, and then as a result of Bhagwan's trigger, not only is Arjuna's mind focused on the problem, he realizes that he doesn't have the answer. And he surrenders to Bhagwan.
And that show me the path.
Exactly. And so it's only about 10 or 15 verses into the second chapter that the actual message of the Bhagavad Gita begins.
True.
And in response, what does Bhagwan say? Bhagwan says, you think you're going to kill these people. You may somewhere think that they will kill you or your people. But do you realize that which you are is not this body? It's not this mind. It's not even this intellect. It is a imperishable, unkillable, not just unkillable, unwettable, untouched divine presence that is eternal. It always has been, it always will be. So therefore, act in awareness. So that's why the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is known as Sankhya Yoga. It is actually a summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. And in that, Bhagavan Shri Krishna first tells Arjun that this is who you are. Then he tells him, therefore, this is how you must act based on who you are. And that's why we understand Karma Yoga as the concept.
Yes.
Now, karma yoga is usually people say, karm kar, phal ki asha na kar. But neither is that in the verse, and that's not the whole verse either, and nor is it the whole message. Because Bhagavan says, karmanya eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, which is your right is to the action only, not to its results. But then he adds, ma karma phala heturbuhu mate sangostva akarmani, which is neither act with the intention of the fruit, but also don't attach yourself to inaction. So what is Bhagavan saying? Act with the awareness that the divine principle alone is. That is the only truth. And some schools of philosophy will say that that divine principle is Bhagavan Shree Krishna himself. Some schools of philosophy will say it is the Atman alone,
Yes.
Paramatma, it's connected to Brahman. Okay? And that is the next level of study that students should go on and say, okay, which of these explanations most connects with me? Both those explanations are complete of themselves. The paths that they espouse are complete. It's not like one you have to study, then you'll get to the other. No, they are complete. But which appeals to me, so you can go into that. Anyway, that I'm just putting it as a
makes sense.
milestone for the listener, so that when they get to that point, they can move forward. He says you should act knowing that there is an unchanging, unending divine presence always. And the method of acting in that divine awareness is known as karma yoga. He then starts to give him examples of what a person who behaves as a karma yogi looks like.
Yeah.
Like literally Arjun says, how does he stand? How does he sit? And so he gives some beautiful examples. I won't go through all of them because, we'll run out of time.
No, but it's very interesting that there is so much detailing in there,
Yes.
which we then can emulate if we want to live that life.
Correct. And actually Bhagavan uses chapter 3, chapter 4. Chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga. Chapter 4 is Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yoga. So renunciation is added. And sannyas actually is wrongly or incompletely translated as renunciation, because sannyasa is two Sanskrit words. Samyak Nyasa. Nyasa means to set something down. Even if you set a foundation, it's called Shila Nyasa. Shila Nyas.
Nice.
Okay. So to set something, what to set? Sun. Samyak. Total. So everything that you have done, you set to one side. You evolve your sense of self, which is where we started the discussion.
Yes.
Know yourself.
Yeah.
Get yourself to that level, and then all of your actions just set it aside. Sannyas. So that's chapter 4. And in that, Bhagavan starts to speak of manifestation, or what we would know today as manifestation. But the direction that Bhagavan gives is really beautiful and really deep, because he says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashah. He says, as people approach me, so too do I reward them. My path alone is the path that people are walking. Now, ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham. So bhajan is usually we see as we are doing bhajan for Bhagwan.
Yeah.
We are serving Bhagwan, but Bhagwan says, I serve them. Bhajamyaham.
Oh.
So what that means is that firstly, Bhagwan has our welfare in mind. But more importantly, what we want from Bhagwan, Bhagwan will give it to us fully, which means that we'll get not just what we desire, but those consequences as well.
Yeah.
So if we say manifestation, just in its sort of colloquial sense of the term, we think that whatever I want, I will get. But the colloquial sense of the term omits the consequences of what we want.
Absolutely.
If I want unlimited, or if I want a certain amount of wealth, through that process I might manifest it, but the people whom I kick on the way up, the consequences of that I have to get. So how do you manifest without consequences? That is explained through Karma Yoga.
Very interesting. No, but that's also because, most, wise adults will tell you that when you pray, always pray to God by saying, do whatever you think is best for me. Because even if you look at history, it'll always tell you that what that person aspired to be almost became their cause of death or their downfall in some way.
Yes.
Whether if you talk about Ravana, he really wanted to be so evolved, have all the powers in the world. and it was then his ego that brought him down.
Correct.
Right? Or if you talk, there are so many other stories which talk through the same thing.
Yes.
To really show you that whatever you ask for, which is if you want to be rich, that's great. But then everything, all the stress that comes with it, you also get.
Yeah.
You can't say, I only want the money and I don't want the stress. Or I only want the money, I'm not going to do the hard work.
Exactly.
It all comes as a package. But I think sometimes in our lives, we forget the package of it. We only look at the shiny toy that we want at the end. And then when we get the whole package, we then look up to God saying, Ye kya kar diya? Now I'm stuck.
Absolutely. And what makes us think that the circumstances we are currently in aren't the desires that we have held in the past? Everything that we are in at the moment is either a desire of the past or that manifested through action at some stage, I'm sure, a desire of the past or a consequence of the past. So what can we do? We can either continue fueling those desires or we can stop being actively involved in the continuation of this cycle. So that is where really the concept of dhyana yoga, which is really start to see in chapter 6 onwards, comes in. So the previous chapters 3, 4, 5 are what to do, karma yoga. 6 onwards is how to be.
Yeah.
Now, as we proceed through these chapters, one thing we notice that every chapter is called yoga. Sankhya, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, chapter 1, Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, and so on. Yoga is not just contorting our body into different shapes. Yoga comes from the root word yuj, which means union. So it is achieving union. So that's how we say even bhakti yoga.
Yeah.
Bhakti also means union.
Absolutely.
Bhakti yoga, completely united. So we have discussed jnana, we have discussed karma, we have discussed manifestation, we have discussed dhyana that comes in the Gita, we have discussed yoga. One thing I'd like to finally end on, which is bhakti yoga. Now, bhakti is one of the most beautiful elements of our spiritual journey. Now, bhakti, unfortunately, is seen as a caricature these days. Someone sat, singing, dancing, doing puja and so on. But those are just the external expressions. What we can't see is the stirring of people's hearts. And we can never see that. It might be that someone is sat there completely, flowing with tears for the divine, and in their heart they're thinking, yaar, khane ke liye kya hai iske baad?
Yes, absolutely.
So, Bhagwan speaks extensively of Bhakti Yoga. Even though it is one of the shortest chapters, and there's 2 chapters that only have 20 verses.
Achha.
But there are some verses with 4 lines and some verses with 2 lines. So, in chapter 15, there are 20 verses, there are a number with 4 lines. So, in chapter 12, which is Bhakti Yoga, there are only verses with 2 lines each. So, that's why it's the shortest chapter. But
I love this trivia. It's so cool. Yeah.
In that brief chapter, Bhagwan enumerates whom he sees as a bhakta. So we may say, I am a bhakta, but does Bhagwan see us as a bhakta? And there are really many, many beautiful qualities that Bhagwan speaks about. I'll just touch on a couple of verses.
Please.
It's okay. Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha sarva dukkha sukhakshami santushta satatam yogi yatatma drudha nishchayaha mayarpita manobuddhir yomad bhakta sa me priyaha. Yeah.
Person I will love.
Adveshta. So one who has no dislikes, towards whom sarva bhutanam, everyone around. I may like you, but I might not like the third person there. Or I might like that person and you might like the third person and despise me.
Yeah.
That's not bhakti. Bhakti is adveshta, no dislike towards anyone around. And if we start to use this definition of bhakti, unfortunately, in our hearts, we'll realize that most of us are not bhaktas.
We're not.
Because even in our bhakti, we'll say, I see bhakti towards my vision of reality, but that person's vision of reality is wrong. So, adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha. That's not just enough to not have active dislike, but to actively have friendship and compassion. Maitri and karuna. Maitra karuna evacha. plus nirmamo nirahankaraha. Neither have a sense of mine or I in our limited identity. We spoke so extensively about ahankara.
Yeah.
Nirmamo nirahankaraha sarva dukkha sukha kshami. One who is forgiving in all times of sukha and dukkha. I may forgive when I am very happy.
Of course.
But the moment someone just, if I'm in a bad mood, someone just mildly crosses, pick up the phone, how dare you, what is this? Someone cuts you off in traffic, arey, kya hai?
Full road rage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, adveshta sarva bhutana maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirhankara sarva dukkha sukhakshami. As a result of this, santushta satatam yogi. One who is always content in situations. And we get a barometer of this as well. You cut your ear, are you content? Yes. Okay, chalo, we can not judge, but we can use these as measurement points to, are we really walking the path or not?
Yeah.
Santushta satatam yogi, one who is united. This is santushta satatam yogi. Yata atma drudha nishchayaha. One who has absolute conviction in the nature of their being, who's authentically established in who they are.
Yeah. For that, you have to have a very deep practice.
Yeah. It's
Your
to
sadhana has to be very, very deep.
To be a bhakta is not a light thing.
Yeah.
People think, bhakti is so lightweight, do this practice and then...
No, just go to the mandir every day and sing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. But what you are talking about, what the Gita is saying is much deeper. It requires constant practice. It's not something I do 1 hour in the morning.
Yeah.
It's the principles I live by every minute of my life.
And Bhagavan says then the rest of it is Mayyarpita Mano Buddhi. Who has given his manaha and buddhi, his mind and his intellect to Bhagavan, Maya. He says Maya as in me.
Yeah.
मुझे अर्पित की है मन और बुद्धि. अर्पित मनो बुद्धि. This type of bhakta is dear to me.
Yeah.
So then bhakti yoga becomes a really, really, really important chapter for us to measure how progressed we are on this path.
Om, this all sounds very nice. I want to do it, but the point of it is when I go out in the real world, all of what you are talking about, we are not incentivized to live our lives in that way, right? So, when there is a situation where the only way I can get a promotion is I fight with that other guy or put him down, or the only way I can get on that bus, when I need to get to office is push the other guy out because there's a limited space in that bus.
Yes.
Then all of this does not seem relatable anymore.
Correct.
Right? So just also help me, and the good news, at least in this conversation, is that you are leading that other life. And so you can really tell me how, when you have gone through these dilemmas in your life, where you're standing there and saying, okay, I really want that job, but then this guy is also there, and I love all and I love him as well, and how can I be kind to him? Or many other situations where we need to choose one over the other. And then you are suddenly thinking, okay, but my practice and my life values come from the Gita, and this is what the Gita says, but how I need to act is sometimes different.
100%.
How do we bring that alignment?
So see, even in my life, I've faced all of these challenges. How do you move your career ahead? How do you navigate your emotions? How do you deal with breakups?
Yeah.
How do those parts of our life intersect? Because working in an industry like banking, quite often, and I was in consulting before then in banking. So even in consulting, especially in consulting, you walk through the client's door, what else is going on in your life is left outside. Suddenly you're there providing a service, and you have to be, worth the billable time, which is very, very high, So yes, it's a big challenge. And how do we navigate that is also a big challenge. But there is a 2-step way that we can deal with this. In fact, there's a 3-step way. And this is actually what I've done in my life. So I'm speaking from experience. One is that there is absolutely no substitute for hard work. Okay. And I've been rejected many times for promotions. When I was a student, I was at the London School of Economics. And I graduated in 2008, in the year that the crash happened.
Oh.
And when I was applying for graduate jobs after that, when I was applying for graduate jobs before the crash, the situation was quite precarious. I had 8 rejections in one day. And coincidentally, how many companies had I applied to?
8.
8. All 8 rejected me in the same 24-hour period.
Wow. How did you take that rejection?
We have to understand that the world is telling us something. Am I learning? Am I changing? See, if we are constantly receiving a message from the universe, it might be in the form of a rejection, it might be in the form of failed relationships, it might be in many, many ways. Are we recognizing the patterns? Are we willing to look ourselves in the mirror and say that after another failed relationship or a non-starter, are we able to look ourselves in the mirror and say, am I actually looking for the right person? Or do I have a sufficiently stable sense of self that I don't let someone else walk all over me? Because otherwise, those patterns will keep repeating until we get the lesson.
Oh my God, so true. My God. Yeah, absolutely.
So step 1 is we have to do the work. Work is work hard, but do hard work as well. Yeah. Second is we have to know what lights us up. And that could be our what, and that could be our why. Now, what do I mean by what and why? Our why is the reason that we are working, or the reason we're doing anything.
Yeah.
I may want to do something and earn a certain amount of money to serve my family. That is my why. Are we always clear about our why?
Sometimes we don't even ask it. We
don't
just go
ask
with the
ourselves
flow.
the questions. And I was telling you earlier, I do coaching work as well. Typically work with extremely successful people. And typically one of the things we focus on is what is the definition of success. Because we have very, very, very successful people who don't see themselves as success. So to do that, we have to understand our why. Why am I doing it? And we might just find such a compelling reason that we are happy to do the hard work
So
to
true.
fulfill that why. Soldiers are willing to lay down their life because their why is so strong. The hardest thing anyone can do, they are willing to do it. Their why is strong. And alongside that why, what? What is it that lights me up on the inside? Am I truly a financial data analyst at heart? Or am I a singer at heart? And the trouble is when we put this sort of dichotomies, they say, I can't stop being a financial analyst because I have to pay the bills and all of that. Yes. And there's a good why for you to do that. But are we nourishing our hearts whilst we're nourishing our family? Because the worst thing that we can do is resent our family.
Yes.
Which is inevitably what is going to happen. And we see it in generations. At some point, some person loses their top and says, for you, I sacrifice so much and you don't appreciate this and that. And then the child turns around and says, I didn't ask for it. I asked for a presence in my life. Yeah.
Which I didn't get.
Which we didn't get as a result, yeah. So the second one is we have to be clear about what lights us up. And that's also what I've done. I have a range of hobbies outside of banking.
Your very intense job.
And typically it is quite creative work. Because banking is, I do strategy in banking, and that is creative in its own right. But it's also very factual. You cannot be creative with numbers, right? That's what's called fraud.
Or bad match, like in my case.
You massage the figures, as they say. So I paint. There was one point, the toughest projects that I used to do, at that time I used to garden. I used to be delighted when bulbs of tulips came out of the ground because, those bulbs of tulips won't ask me when the deliverable is due. So we have to do simple things that are nourishing us, and it needn't be a change of career. How much time are we truly making for ourselves? It's the most important relationship we will have over and above any other relationship. Our relationship with ourselves will last at least from the moment of birth until the moment of death, and likely last beyond it at both ends. So we have to understand what nourishes us. And then the third thing is do what nourishes you. Whether it's as a side hobby or a side gig, with meaningful investment of time and effort. So for example, regardless of how busy, difficult my job is, I will always take time out to share Shastric wisdom, always take time out for coaching sessions, always take time out. I've taken 6 months off from my career. I'm on sabbatical at the moment. 2.5, 3 months were spent in an ashram learning. 2.5, 3 months are being spent out in the world sharing. So let's do what lights us up.
Yeah.
And then as a result of that, what happens? We end up fulfilling 3 beautiful messages that we get in the Gita. So see, it's not that this is the message, you have to live up to it. Live in this simple way and we will find that there's alignment with the wisdom that Bhagwan's given us. So if we know who we are, what lights us up, that we know our swadharma, our swabhava. What is the collection of tendencies in our heart? That is our swabhava. If we act in alignment with that swabhava, we are fulfilling our swadharma. We are fulfilling our dharma to our family, fulfilling our dharma to society. We are fulfilling our dharma to ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we act in this aligned and integrated way, we will get to the point where we discover our swarupa,
Our
the
true self.
divine light that is within us. So people say, oh, how can I meditate for hours? I have a job to do. But if I do my job for hours, then I won't be able to meditate and realize myself. Actually, it's not separate. Do what you must in awareness that you are doing it for a reason. And there is an inner authentic self that is getting expressed. The more we express it, the more we are able to attune to that swarupa of ours. People often tell me, you have managed to balance both spiritual life and material life. But for me, the two are not separate. The reason I have a material life that is of a certain LinkedIn profile, let's say, is because there is a very strong spiritual grounding. And I don't think that I can continue my spiritual progress without engaging with the world that has come to me. See, if one was meant to be in an ashram, one would be in an ashram.
Yes.
They would not be on a battlefield, which is what Bhagavan Shree Krishna says to Arjuna.
Yeah.
You are here for a reason. Imagine an Arjuna who has got so many tendencies within himself, to be very active, to be a defender of justice at all costs. He sees some injustice, some minor injustice happening in an ashram. He might take a sword and kill someone. Is that the right thing to do in an ashram in the Himalayas? No. So the right place for him and his tendencies is the battlefield. In the same way, our own Kurukshetra could be a hospital if we're a doctor or a nurse, a law court if we're a lawyer, a art studio if we are a painter. These are all our own Kurukshetras. It's not that painters or sculptors are doing intensely calming things. It's very difficult if you're actually painting.
Yeah.
One wrong stroke and everything is gone. You put little bit too much pressure as a sculptor, suddenly a whole block of marble is lost.
Yeah.
So we are all in our own Kurukshetras. And adopting a spiritual perspective in our life then manifests the ways that we can walk the path. But that perspective is super important to start with.
Beautifully put. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, because I also see my life a lot like that, where, when you spoke about sannyasa and what it means, I think colloquially we think of it as something we will do after our brahmacharya, right? Which is, okay, after my worldly responsibilities, when I can barely walk, can barely talk, and, have any sense of self, at that time I will go and meditate.
Correct.
But now, of course, I need to only work.
Yeah.
But that's not what sannyasa means. It means exactly what you're doing, and maybe what I'm attempting to do in my life, which is use my work life as almost like a feedback mechanism for my spiritual life.
Yes.
If I am not getting triggered in that moment, then I know my practice and my sadhana is doing me well and I'm on the right path.
Absolutely.
But the minute I am, I know I need to go back and meditate more.
Yeah. See, if we we spoke about cut on the ear. If we cut our finger, for example,
Yeah.
and it's bleeding, why do we experience pain? It's because our body is telling us, bringing our attention here to the cut. If our body did not bring our attention to the cut, we may bleed to death even.
Yeah. So it's a survival mechanism.
Exactly. So pain in this case becomes a survival mechanism. So when we feel pain in our hearts, when we feel disappointment, we have to ask ourselves, what is this drawing my attention towards? It might not happen in the moment. In the moment, we may just grieve. And I think some situations it is right to grieve. Death, it is right to grieve. Why did Bhagwan Shiva carry Sati through half the world? To demonstrate to us that it is right to grieve. Why did Bhagwan Shri Ram cry when Sita was abducted? He's Shri Ram. He is the divine himself personified. Why? To demonstrate to us that it is okay to grieve. So in the moment, grieve. But in the next moment, when there's that lingering pain, what is my consciousness being drawn towards? What do I need to focus on? This we have to think about, And we spoke about meditation. Meditation is not just sitting cross-legged, breathing, chanting. No. Our work, when aligned with our nature, is meditation itself. And we will find in every field, regardless of how much someone may hate their job, they will find themselves in moments of being in the flow state. And there they produce their best work.
Yeah.
Why? Because they are aligned with their tendencies. So meditation is not a thing. Meditation is doing whatever you're doing it well.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And I loved what you said about the flow state, because when what the world wants you to do and what your tendencies are, like you say, converge, is when that magic happens, right? And that is really what we constantly talk about, being close to nature, being in tune with nature. That is what it means. It doesn't mean go live in a hut. It means that, can you really align to the nature external and internal of you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want to ask you that basically what you're telling me is that when there is struggle in life, it's trying to tell you and teach you something. I'm sure you've had moments in your life when that has happened. Can you explain to me how did your learnings or your sadhana really help you get out of that? Whether that is, you spoke about the rejection at work, but something more if you can share. Because, a lot of us look at struggle saying, but God loves me, I'm doing everything right, I am बोलते ना मैं भगवान का अंश हूँ, मगर फिर भी मेरे साथ ये बहुत खराब हो रहा है, तो मेरे ही साथ क्यों हो रहा है?
बिल्कुल. Exactly ये thoughts मुझे हुए थे. I had these thoughts in my, I think, close to my final year of university, second or third year of university. As a student, I was broke, as most students are. And as a foreign student who came from a very, very modest family and had taken extensive student loan to study in London, I was exceptionally broke.
Yeah.
So we spoke mood and vimood. So I was broke, Vishesh broke.
Yeah.
So I used to be so broke that, a Subway sandwich that is considered to be like not very good food, like cheap fast food, that also I couldn't afford. So one day, I was sort of both tired and hungry after a day of studying in the library. So I was walking back to my hostel, and on the way, I saw a Subway. I was like, chal yaar, let me treat myself, like let's spend a little bit at least. So I was there and I was ordering whatever for and then suddenly two friends of mine, or two acquaintances of mine from the London School of Economics show up. And they are all both dressed, very well in their suits and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, what's going on? Why are you dressed in a suit on a normal, weekend evening even, I think it must have been. And they're like, oh, no, we just concluded the LSE Alternative Investment Conference. And, we have both got offers from Goldman Sachs and doing all of these sorts of things. And I was like, oh, yeah, go, great, good for you. But in my heart, I was like, it was literally being crushed.
Yeah.
And I was like, here I am, living with not much, trying to make my way in the world. And any foreign student will tell you how difficult it can be.
Very tough.
And, it's like an existential question. Oh my God, how will I go back and face, if I don't have a job? And here's these people like who've just done this conference and landed the best jobs in the world. What have they got that I don't have? Why are good things happening to them and not to me? In that moment, I received probably one of the best lessons I've ever had in my life. And it is in the most random way. The lesson is see the signs that the universe is giving you. And the sign that the universe gave me in that moment, in that subway, I can't even call it a restaurant really. It
Outlet.
was a subway thela
Yeah.
in London.
Yeah.
Was an Oasis song that was playing on the radio called Master Plan. And the line in that is, it's all part of the master plan. I won't sing it, but I say the line and I know exactly the tune in which I heard it. And I remember it lifting me instantly. And there's often times when I look back at that moment and wonder what that life could have been if that message hadn't come and had not been received, in that way.
Sure.
It is all part of the master plan.
Very profound. It is. But to be able to hear it in that moment when you're down and you are feeling envy and you're feeling broken,
And why me?
the victim, and then you suddenly wake up and be like, okay, maybe there's something I need to do different for me to get that job.
Exactly. And maybe that's not the job for me, maybe something else is. And I would have been profoundly unhappy as an investment banker. I mean, I'm just being very honest with you.
Yeah.
It's all good work. I don't, envy them, their lives. But I've had a very fulfilling career because I was able to learn from that moment and do something. And I say I was able to learn, I got the message. Actually, it was divine grace that the message landed. And there are so many moments in my career where literally a random coincidence changed the track of my life. Like, for example, I'll tell you, I graduated with a degree in international relations and history, which meant that when I started a consulting career through various detours, due to the 2008 financial crisis, which was great fun. It genuinely was fun. I mean, I didn't have a mortgage to pay. So
lucky.
it was an academic observation of flames and destruction. But
I wish we could see our life like that. Just step away and just observe,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's tough. So because I graduated in IR, I was put in consulting with public sector clients in the UK. And at that time, my client was the Ministry of Defense, which was exceptionally boring. Wasn't having a good time. And all of my friends were consulting for banks. So it so happened that because it was the Ministry of Defense and there was certain secrecy and you weren't allowed into sites, I used to work remotely from our offices, not work from home, I was from our offices.
Okay.
So I could sit anywhere. So I used to sit on the banking floor with all my friends. And, they'd be all talking about numbers and I'd be talking about like procurement of battle tanks and so on. And then eventually what happened, that project finished and I was just hanging out with my friends and someone who was maybe a couple of levels senior came and said, oh, your project is over. We have a role. Why don't you come? And I'd actually started my consulting career saying that if I wanted to be in banking, I would have been in banking, But in that moment, it was like, be open to the opportunities that have come. And I went. And in that first project, I was managing a £130 million business case, which if I had made rounding errors, would have got a lot of people fired, not just me. 130 million is how much? 1300 crore?
Huh?
Yeah, 1,300 crores.
Yeah. That's crazy amount of money. And this was what year?
2010 it would have
Yeah.
been. 9, 10 that time.
Yeah.
So, and as a result of being able to do that well, and I was able to perform in that role because of meditation and having the space and all of those things, then things moved on, And I think if I may add a little bit more.
Of course.
Particularly for people when there are moments of challenges, are in moments of challenge. Our worst critic most often is ourselves. the way we speak to ourselves, we may not speak to anyone else. If we imagine someone saying those things to our best friends, we'd be willing to go and fight with that person and say, how dare you say this? But we are very happy to say those to ourselves. And
Every day, several times.
multiple times. And the thing is, especially when we are walking the spiritual path, I want to say this, that we are so focused on being spiritual that we forget that we are human. And part of being human is failing.
Is to err.
Exactly. And if we are erring, then we need to be kind to ourselves. I'm not saying that, just accept everything. No. But be kind. Recognize that if there's a certain negative tendency in our hearts, it has developed for a reason. And until that underlying reason is not addressed, we won't be able to. Say, I'll give you an example. One of the challenges, and it might be a little bit off color, so I'll leave it to your judgment to edit it or not.
No, please.
One of the challenges that many men suffer with is an addiction to online pornographic content.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate reality of the digital revolution is that we find men who are in the age 25, 26, who at that point have been addicted for half their lives. Now, if from a spiritual perspective, it's easy to say that that is wrong, don't do it. And I'm not certainly condoning the behavior. But what I am saying is that there is a certain groove in the mind that has been created and deepened over time. And there is a certain need that is met by that specific poison. Yeah. So we need to be kind and supportive of each other as we recondition ourselves. And definitely spirituality, all those three things, Shastra, Sadhana, Sangha, will help you recondition the mind only if we are kind to ourselves. And truly, we cannot be kind to other people until we are kind to ourselves first.
No, absolutely. But I think also addiction comes from from a place where you're also trying to compensate for some deep need which has not been met.
Yeah.
You're trying to cover up for that. I think that is one. And second, also, to your point about, yes, you need to be kind. Yes, you have the ability to do the, have the wisdom, do the sadhana. You have all that path. But are you really willing to do that and get out of that addiction? I think the willingness and the attitude is also very, very important.
Absolutely. And, addiction is one of those things. We spoke about trauma.
Yes.
Addiction, and this is me using the words of eminent scientists and psychologists, but addiction is fulfilling a need that was created by a traumatic experience. And Gabor Mate, who is a brilliant psychologist, has given a very good definition of trauma. See, nowadays we talk about trauma, it's almost become like meme material. Oh, my trauma. But he gives a really good definition, which says that trauma is either something bad happened to you or not enough good things happened to you. And as a result of that created a need that something that was temporarily fulfilling filled might not be fulfilling in the long term.
Absolutely.
And there's another fantastic thinker in this space who equates addiction and addictive and overcoming addiction with social connection. His name is Johann Hari, I think. Not Yuval Noah Harari. Johann Hari is his name.
Okay.
And he's British Jewish, like Yuval Noah Harari, but Johann Hari is a British author and psychologist. And he says that actually positive connections amongst people is what will, positive, authentic connections amongst people is what will help overcome addiction. And I think the more we can create safe spaces in our society, and society doesn't mean society at large. Society could mean
Sangha.
In our family, in our friend circle, in our workplace, with our partner even. The more we can create spaces of genuine human connection, the more we're able to help each other.
Absolutely. And what you said about loneliness is very real. There are so many studies which show that people who live like, we all Indians do, which is in community, in family, just by that interaction, the number of years to our lives get added. And these are
Absolutely.
fulfilled and happy lives,
Yes.
happy years, not just, you're not just living, but you're actually feeling fulfilled.
Yeah.
And we are sort of losing that a lot, right? I mean, I'm sure, you can also recall when you went out and you were younger and we went out to play. It was always going out in the park, playing with like 12 other kids from the community, all coming together and screaming at each other.
Yeah.
Also, if getting out on the first ball, taking your bat and
Yeah,
walking away,
walking away, yeah.
because it's mine, so the game is over.
Yes.
But we don't do that anymore,
Yeah.
right? Now we're all on our digital devices. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think we're losing that human connection because of the extremities of us using
Yeah.
the digital
Yeah.
ecosystem.
It was easier to make human connection, I feel, certainly 20 years ago, than it is today. And what that means is we need to work harder today. I as a business leader, and I'm sure there are many business leaders who are listening to this conversation as well, we need to make sure that we are creating spaces of connection in our workplace. Why? Because as adults, we spend the most time at work. And we may have an open plan office, but in that open plan office, everyone has their headphones on and they are blinkered and they are looking at a screen. Now, that's not a bad thing. I love having my headphone on because I can focus on the work that I'm focusing on. But that should not be our default setting. Quite often as a leader, I have to take my headphones off even though the noise may bother me and be available. And quite often I may have important things to do, but I need to take an hour out and go have lunch with someone and listen to what their situation is and make sure that they are as comfortable talking to other members of the team. Quite often as a leader, I have to take the time and go up the line and say, look, I'm really struggling with this thing. Can you help? And it's only when we do that, we are successful leaders, that then creates a ripple that reaches everyone in our team and allows them to have human connection, with genuine human connection with the people that they are working with, and not just drinks as happens in the UK. And then those people feel comfortable to go into their family homes because they're seeing role modeled behaviors.
Yeah.
And in their homes and their family settings, create those circumstances as well. And who knows, then that child who might otherwise have been on the phone gets used to being socialized and saying, oh, look, I'm really struggling at this point, rather than feeling the struggle and numbing themselves with the phone.
Very well said. No, absolutely. And I think what you said, going up the line and saying, hey, I'm really struggling with it, that coming from a man is very difficult because generally we are stereotyped to not be vulnerable. And it's actually in that vulnerability that real human connections are made.
Yeah, I feel it goes both ways, to be honest. Yes, there is a challenge with vulnerability, being a man, and there's been a lot of focus on vulnerability recently. But I also feel like as a man, you have an advantage because we play a lot of team sports just growing up.
Yeah.
And you get that you have to work with each other and you learn how to socialize. Like you can, maybe throw a tantrum and take your bat, ball and stumps away once in a while. But you certainly can't do that anyway because you'll find that nobody wants to play with you after a while, right? And then that's how you get into a workspace and you're able to actually socialize. And you find that top-ranking kid who, and I've hired some of them and I've worked with many of them, who got the best grades throughout but was not surrounded by people, was not playing because it was a worthless thing to do, actually really struggles to socialize in the workplace. And socialize, I don't mean go for a drink or whatever after work, but actually be able to interact socially in the workplace. In leadership is not something that you can learn.
Yeah.
It's certainly not something you're born with.
Yeah.
It is something that we cultivate over time. It's not something you get in a course. It's not a natural thing, but we cultivate it over time. And I think also just to touch on one other thing, vulnerability. Yes, vulnerability is important. But one of the challenges we have in this world today is that everyone is being vulnerable and publicly declaiming their innermost, darkest secrets without having a net to catch them.
True.
So everyone is focused on vulnerability, whereas I think what we need to be focused on is healing. The distinction is not that great. or the step that needs to be taken is not that great. But the focus is vastly different. Because if you're being vulnerable with me, I can't just be vulnerable back with you. Because we're both saying, oh, we're in a miserable place, let's be miserable together.
And let's wallow together and let's drink our sorrows and everything else and escape together.
Yeah. So if I'm focused on healing and you're being vulnerable, then that creates the space for me to support you with your healing. Or if I'm being vulnerable and you're healing, then we can support each other in that way.
Yeah.
So I think vulnerability in the Western concept has actually led to a bit of a weird sort of situation where actually a couple of years after people started being vulnerable, now nobody is really vulnerable. Everywhere you end up with like the Donald Trump archetype who's like, I'm not vulnerable no matter what.
I'll man up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and the Shastric version of that, the Sanatani version of that, the Bharatiya version of that is to focus on healing. And we say to Bhagwan, in this case as Arjun did, listen, I'm really struggling. I need you to show me the way. And then Bhagwan will say what you need to say.
So beautifully said. True. That I'm helpless and show me the path.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of humility in that, where you're just, bowing down and saying, help me out. I don't know where to go. And then I think things start to unravel.
Yes.
We touched upon leadership, and I know there are several leadership lessons in the Gita. Can you just maybe help us and enlighten us even on that?
I think we've touched on them actually through the course of this conversation as well, which is, know what lights you up. See, when we say leadership, actually, let's go and define leadership first. Leadership we see always as something other people do. We always, wherever we are in life, we see someone else is the leader. If we're in a company, the CEO is the leader, or, my boss's boss is the leader, or my boss is the leader. If we see in the country, Modi ji is the leader, or, whoever else, the prime minister, president, whoever it might be, they are the leaders. But the reality is we are all leaders because we are leading our life. We are leading ourselves. If we get rid of our own agency, our sense of, being able to manifest a destiny, then suddenly we are left rudderless.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying ahankar. I'm not saying aham karta, the sense that I am doing. No. But we have to have some degree of purusharth. Purusharth means self-made choices and ownership of our choices. So leadership is a universal thing. And I'm not just speaking of my own so-called intelligence, but actually this is from the Gita as well.
Yeah.
How one leads their life, the degree of alignment that they have with their true self determines the outcomes that they end up achieving.
So we are first leaders in our own lives. So let's do that well.
We are all leaders of our own lives.
Yeah.
People say, तुम job करोगे कि business करोगे? अरे जो job कर रहा है वो भी business में है. Do you know? Anyone who's doing a job is also doing a business. Why? Because the product is themselves.
Yeah.
And they are marketing their skills and they're demonstrating their abilities and they're moving. So someone who earns, whatever amount in a job is no less than someone who earns whatever amount in a business. In the same way, all of us are leaders.
Yeah.
Let's become good leaders. And I think some of the guidance that we have already touched on should help. I'll give you one, maybe not Gyan, I'll just give you one example. Kya hua mere saath? In guiding, like I found myself about, actually I'll use a more recent example. In COVID, there were work from home arrangements that were put in place everywhere.
Yeah.
And it became very, very difficult to connect with others, not just physically, but even how many times will you get on a video call and say, I'm struggling? Other people also have a bandwidth limitation to be able to deal with that. And ironically, or not ironically, but what so happened for me is that my work just boomed through COVID. There was a work aspect of life that just boomed through COVID. And it led to, I think it's been a couple of promotions over the last 2 years. So it's last 2 to 3 years. So it's been a very decent pace of stepping up.
Fantastic. That's a lot. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But one of the things I realized is that when I got the first of those 2 promotions, the team that I'm going to be leading has not had that much time with each other. They've probably not had that much time with themselves because they were caring for their children and maybe other members of the family and educating them and, being parents and teachers and professionals in the same time. So even though there was a huge work stack, I actually started my role a month earlier than I should have. And what I ended up, I sort of worked it out with my previous boss as well, mainly by delivering what he needed 1 month in advance.
Oh.
But we were able to start, and that 1 month was just spent listening.
Yeah.
Was just getting on the phone with each individual person and saying, okay, well, and it wasn't just a tell me your war and peace, but it was a set of guided questions like, how are you feeling in yourself? How are you feeling in the team? What does success to you look like? What do you think some of the challenges have been? So that as a result, I was able to start better as a leader. And this lesson I got from Ganeshji. Because Ganeshji, even if you look at him, tells you the qualities of how to be a leader. The name itself, Ganesh, comes from Gana Adhish. Gana are the attendants of Shiva. Adhish is the leader. So leadership lessons from Sri Ganesh can be obtained just by doing his darshan. How? Because Ganesha has 2 big ears, which say listen first. He's got 2 small eyes that say concentrate on the work that you're doing. He has a mouth that is covered, saying don't speak that much. But when you speak, say something of value. He's got a trunk that can uproot a tree and lift a pin from the ground. Tells us be dexterous. He has 2 teeth, one of which he has cut off in the different stories, where one story is to write the Mahabharata.
Yes.
So be willing to self-sacrifice. If you just do darshan of Bhagwan Shri Ganesh with the right mindset, we will unpack leadership lessons that we can bring into our lives. Now, I'm not going to sit down with one of my team members in London and say, see a photo of Ganesh. But as a leader, if you have to coach someone, then we have a depth of wisdom in Sanatan Vedic Dharma. I am trying my best to share as much as I can and as much as I know, because there's obviously limitations, whilst also obviously continuing my spiritual journey. But anyone else also who is touched by this, please you all also start absorbing it, living it in that way, and then sharing it.
Oh, absolutely. And also be curious to first find out more.
Yes.
I would have not ever imagined looking at the idol of, Ganesha ever again. Am I going to look at it the same way after listening to you? Now the whole thing just comes alive to me.
Yeah.
Otherwise it was just, okay, there's somebody out there, there's Ganesh Chaturthi, a lot of things go around it, but I don't have any other connection beyond that. But now I understand, why it has been made in a particular way and what are they trying to tell us. Because an idol is a way, it's a more a human manifestation of the way they see a god and what is the lesson being told to us.
Correct.
That's how I understand it, right? That's why we have, I think, 330 million gods in India.
Atheist quote, that could also be taken as 33 categories of God, a certain number of Adityas, a certain number of Rudras. But the fundamental idea is this, that as our tendencies, that is the form that Bhagwan takes to guide us. And if one is a Ganesh Bhakta, that doesn't mean that there's no wisdom to be obtained from Krishna. In fact, quite often we are walking the path with one Ishta Devata and suddenly another one enters our life. We have to be open to see what is being taught to us in those situations.
But that's also because you're resonating, right? In that evolution in your life, you're resonating with that idol, with that god. And when you evolve, then you suddenly start resonating with some other form, so to say. Would that be?
An idol represents an ideal.
Yeah.
Like when we see a flag, a national flag of India, and we salute it, are we saluting just the fluttering cloth with 3 colors and a chakra in the middle? Never.
It's what it stands for.
We are saluting what it stands for, ideal of the nation. In the same way, the Vigraha, which is the correct Sanskrit word for it, not even Murti, because Murti, a Vigraha is an energized Vishesh Graha home. It's an energized special home that the divine can inhabit. Vigraha, When we see the Vigraha, we are seeing all of the qualities. We are bowing down to that ideal that has manifested not just in the ether conceptually, but literally pratyaksha in front of us. That's why when we see Bhagwan, even in the Vigraha, we don't say seeing, we say darshan.
Yes.
Because we are seeing Bhagwan, but Bhagwan is also seeing us.
Yeah, so it's not blind from any standards.
Not at all.
It's very alive. Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. I also want to ask you, you did do a video around the Hanuman Chalisa and the power of it and the
Yes.
impact that it can create.
Yeah.
People always think of it as, if you're having a fearful situation or if you're in a situation where there's maybe danger, that's when you use it. But from what I understand from you, it has many other uses. So if I could just understand that.
This question, yes. Sankata se Hanuman chhodave, manakrama vachana dhyano jalave. When crisis moments come, Hanuman can save you. But a good business manager, a good CEO is someone who manages their business in such a way that crises are less likely to occur.
Absolutely.
Sometimes there's a market crisis, you can't help it. But we won't create self-created crisis. Even with our health, a person who we consider healthy is not someone who starts their physio after a fracture, but actively maintains their health in such a way that that fracture doesn't occur. A good CEO is someone who may experience inconveniences, but not crises.
Yeah.
And if you can turn a crisis into an inconvenience, that is good leadership. So in the same way, Hanuman Chalisa builds our resilience in such a way, creates a presence that we have as a result of chanting especially with understanding, that it is less likely that we find ourselves in situation of crises. And why? Not because the situations won't come. If I had to bleed through my ear, I had to bleed through my ear. But what sadhana of Hanuman Chalisa gives me is the ability to deal with that situation. You could have completely lost it and not had such a wonderful conversation as we are having right now. But it's not my ability that I was able to act in that way. It was the result of this sadhana. And I really wish that as Bharatiyas, we understand the potency of these tools that we have been given.
Yeah.
Because I find, having worked all over the world, that amongst the most dedicated and hardworking people you will find are Bharatiyas. But oftentimes what happens is we work very, very hard and some minor glitch comes in the way and we lose everything. Or we lose our entire composure. But we are born in the land where these tools emerged. They are ours to use.
Yeah.
Let's make use of them.
Let's tap into it.
Definitely.
Yeah. No, you spoke about Bharatiyas, right? And the current debate is around, suddenly we were not called India but Bharat. So what is that spiritual connection to that term? And, I'm actually very excited that it's being moved to being called Bharat.
Yeah.
Not that I have a leaning in either direction, but I think it just feels more like home and taps into the Indian heritage that we have.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking it. See, there's a constitutional debate, which actually constitutionally Bharat and India are equated, as it were.
Yeah.
So the situation has emerged, I'm sure because of various political considerations, which I don't want to go into. But constitutionally, they're equitable. Now, spiritually, what does Bharat mean? In one way, Bharat got its name from Raja Bharat. No one disputes that. But what does the word Bharat itself mean? There are so many beautiful meanings. One is Bhaya Ratam iti Bharatam. Bha represents light. Okay. Rata means pursuit of light. In the Vedas itself, light, self-knowledge is personified as light. Bhagwan Surya was one of the sampradayas because there is light and illumination. In the Kathopanishad it says, Na tatra suryo bhati na chandratarakam nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agnihi tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvam edam vibhati. It says, I am not able to see the sun, the moon, the stars. I am not even able to see a small lamp without first seeing the light that is within me, and having seen that light, I'm able to see everything else. So a land which is dedicated to the pursuit of self-knowledge, Bhaya Ratam iti Bharatam, is Bharat.
Beautiful.
The second meaning, Bhasi Ramate iti Bharatam. Having experienced this light, ye bhasne ke baad, abhas aane ke baad, having experienced this light, Ramate, that land which revels, is Bharat.
Oh.
And a third meaning, Bha, light of self-knowledge, Ka Rath, the chariot that takes this knowledge out to the world, that is Bharat.
Oh, lovely. Absolutely. We should become that. And we are that in many ways.
I feel that there is a global need, that the world needs Bharat. Because we have tried different economic systems, we have tried different systems of organizing ourselves. And actually, this is not a political statement against any country.
No, not at all.
But we have found that the only thing that has been created globally is a sense of scarcity. And Bharata, as we understand it, comes inbuilt with a sense of optimism, inbuilt with a sense of abundance. And this is actually said in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan says that if you sacrifice, then you get rain. Now, rain could be rain itself, physical rain, but the conditions for abundance. Even in banking, we use the term for someone who creates liquidity as rainmaker.
Yes.
It's raining money. It's raining wealth. So sacrifice creates the conditions for abundance. Rain. Rain creates food, which is sustenance. Food creates people, which creates a land that is sustained by sacrifice. This sort of self-effacement in some small way for the benefit of others. It's like a parent sacrificing a little bit of sleep for the welfare of the child. A mother sacrificing a little bit of food so the child sleeps with a full stomach. This idea then gave rise to the mightiest civilization. If you say Bharat सोने की चिड़िया थी, everyone talks. कब थी भाई? तब थी जब Chanakya, that time, where under the leadership or the guidance, mentorship of Chanakya, Chandragupta was able to re-establish the Magadha Empire.
Yeah.
And as a result, early in his career, what happened? There was this one point where Chandragupta got very angry with Chanakya. Why? Because Chanakya had imprisoned all of the merchants of the capital city, Patliputra, now Patna. And he went to him and said, how can you imprison all of these merchants? Our kingdom depends on them. You can't just throw them in jail.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, but they were evading taxes. I mean, tax evasion? Really? That's not a big deal. And even now we see how many people are evading taxes, how many companies are evading taxes, and how many countries and their governments are turning a blind eye to tax evasion.
In some cases, countries are incentivizing it. So it's like, you're making it happen so others lose out and you're gaining from it.
Exactly. And what Chanakya said, which lines up perfectly with Bhagwan Shree Krishna's example of sacrifice and rain and sustenance and so on. He said that water in the form of streams joins a mighty river. That river gathers all of the stream water and flows into the ocean. That ocean evaporates to form the clouds. And that cloud then rains onto the land to nourish the streams. There is a cycle in motion. That water is the wealth of society. The contribution that individuals are making in their own business are the streams and rivers that are created. The government utilizing these contributions is the creation of the clouds. The benefit of the government's correct utilization of that water through the creation, as exemplified by the creation of clouds, is what is then able to sustain society and create the conditions for future prosperity. If we put a stop at any one of them, the whole system is out of sync. Now, is that message going to go today? Unlikely. Is that message going to go tomorrow? Maybe. But what do we need for the message to go tomorrow? It means that Bharatiyas need to start acting like Bharatiyas. which means that we need to reconnect with the great storehouse of wisdom that we have got and walk the processes that we have been taught and be the company for each other. Shastra,
personified.
sadhana, sangha.
Yeah.
And therefore then become Bharat for the rest of the world. And then that is the real influence that Bharat can have. It's not purely, military projection and all of those things are fine. Economic strength is fine.
But we have this amazing spiritual knowledge which can allow everyone to become that, not just, have, I think, the Western culture, and I'm not down talking them, but I'm just saying that we're just so incentivized to always have, to hoard, to keep, have a car, have a house, have a this. But I think in our culture, to what you said, having is important, but why don't you become something? Why don't you have an experience so that you can become? Because that's the only thing, the Atman that you said, when you become that, that's the only thing you're going to carry forward. All the rest of it is going to be left right behind here.
Yeah.
So why not invest in that becoming?
Yeah.
And I think we have that ability to do that because of the knowledge that we have. And that's when we can evolve.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I would love to sort of wrap this up here because I think there's so much you've given us, and this example is exactly how, and the approach with which, if we were to live our lives, I think abundance will come our way.
Yeah.
No, for sure. This has been an absolute incredible conversation. And, I can go on for many more hours because I have so many questions. And I think, we align on so many things that, I can go do this for many, many hours. But I think, I want to wrap this up here. But it's been really amazing talking to you. I hope you can come back. And, we don't want to lose you to London again. So keep coming back and sharing your knowledge. Of course, your channels are there. And I absolutely love that you're doing this on YouTube because this is really what is required. Sometimes it's very difficult to pick up that book or have a concerted effort to know about this when our lives are so busy.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to turn on a YouTube 10-minute video when you're on your way to work and learn something new and try and use it in your life, make it practicable, and then try and see what magic it unlocks for you. So thank you so much for sharing this.
May I say one last thing?
Of course.
Just, it's not so much a plug as just a bit of an opportunity for me to continue serving, is that because I'm in India for another couple of months and I've taken a sabbatical from work, I have a little bit more time than usual, I have an opportunity to serve leaders especially in the form of coaching work that I'm doing. Now, this has two impacts. It's paid coaching. It's mostly focused on executives, just because I feel like they can have the biggest impact through their team. So typically the people I work with are senior business leaders or co-founders or, that's mainly the type of...
I understand. The profile.
The profile, exactly. And I'm hoping that by putting myself out there a little bit more, we'll be able to impact a little bit more people. It's paid, of course, but we'll be able to impact a little bit more in the country. So if anyone wishes to get connected, and it's not just in India and stuff like that, most of my people are all over the world that I'm working with. If anyone feels so inspired, then please find me on Instagram, drop me a line, and then I have a team who can get something scheduled.
No, we'll stick the link in the description of the YouTube episode, so folks can go in there and find you and make sure they can sign up for the leadership course.
Wonderful.
I think we'd love that. Because we need value-based leadership. That's what's going to help corporates also grow and really imbibe what you're saying in our being every day, not just 1 hour in the morning.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure being here. I'm sure someone will tell us how much time has passed at the end of it, where it doesn't feel like a moment has passed. It's really been really beautiful. And I think this has been an opportunity for me also to serve your audience. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. And my only ask would be, let's stay connected. As long as I can, I will try and do as much coaching. As long as I can, I will try and reply to every individual messages that I get on my YouTube channel and as many DMs as possible. At some stage that may become impossible, and I'm assuming that will be a good thing because the volume of activity will be so high. But until that day comes, I'm around. So let's
It's
connect.
a good problem to have, and it's been a privilege having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.